Hello engineers, I'm Splattercaster, and today we're going to be discussing respawning, respawn travel, the mechanics of auto-respawn, and how to get to the grid that you want to get to via respawning. Let's begin with this demonstration here of how respawning mechanics operate. So, if we look at this grid is got a dividing line here, and these two medical bays are basically mirror images on either side of this center line here. So, the way auto respawn works, which is currently enabled as a default setting in the game world, particularly on Keen official servers, this is how it works. The game will send you to the nearest medical bay of yours that is turned on. So, if I'm on this side of the line, I will be respawning at this medical bay, which is medical bay A. So, let us demonstrate. I respawn, and here I am, medical room A. Now, if I am slightly across this line, I will be respawning over here at medical room B. Right now, the game is finding the nearest medical room and sending me to respawn there. And here we are. Medical room B. Now, that is the system of auto respawn. You no longer get to choose from the list which of these two respawn bays I get to go to. And actually, we can still see that list. So if I respawn twice in a row in rapid succession, then I get to see the list of available medical rooms. This is kind of the way it used to be. You get to respawn and you'd see, oh god, this screen right here, which would give you all of your grids, and you could just pick one and choose to respawn. But as you can see, they're all not ready. So none of these are able to respawn at, and they're not gonna be ready anytime soon. They're just not available. We can only choose the last one we were at. We can also choose these options here, but we'll get to that towards the end of the video, because this is another important ramification here. So for the meantime, we can only choose the medical room we just were at. So let's respawn there, and we will discuss how to get around that issue. I'm going to delete this grid and we'll move on here. So, now we've got a very simple system to turn the medical room off and have it turn back on after a certain amount of time using a timer block. What this means is that once this medical room is off, we cannot respawn there. The game will then choose the next closest medical room to send us to, which in this case would be this one. So, let's take a look at how this works. This right here is the Cadillac option available to us, as I call it. It's got a little bit extra PCU. It's got two timer blocks and a button panel. This one is kind of the nicest option available, but we'll discuss why. So, again, the basic theory here is turn this medical room off, have the timer block, turn it back on after a set amount of time. That amount of time, in this case 1 minute, is what I call the aperture, and that's an important thing that we're going to discuss here in a moment. So, to demonstrate, if I turn this one off by pressing our button here, the medical room is now off, the timer block has been activated to turn it back on, and I can respawn. If I hit respawn right now, it'll send me to the next closest one, which is this one. And what I mean by next closest one is next closest one to the location of my death. So if I die right here, it will send me to this one. It's just a straight line shot from the exact pinpoint of your location to the next available medical room. So, I'll just show you what this system is doing here. Now this button is triggering this timer block. Unfortunately, the button needs to execute two commands, and since this button, as far as I know, is only capable of executing one command, it is triggering this timer block as its command. Let's just take a look at that. Timer block trigger now. There you go. And this timer block that it is triggering is set up to turn the medical room off, not toggle it on and off, just turn it off, set it to off, and start the other timer block, the reset timer block, as I've got it labeled. So this is not trigger now. This is start, and I'll just show what that looks like toggle block off, not on off, just off. And then the reset timer is set to start, not trigger now, but start. So what that is doing is initiating the countdown to turn this back on. So when we press this button, boom, medical room is turned off. This one is waiting 60 seconds before it turns this one back on. So that's kind of a nice option to have because you just press the button and then you can hit backspace and respawn. Now, let's say you don't really have the PCU for an extra timer block, an extra button panel, or maybe you just don't have the space on your ship. This is the same exact thing, except a little more simplified. So in this case, let's say we don't even have this cockpit available. Here we can just turn this off by hand, and we can reset this and start it. So now the same thing has occurred, except we had to do it manually. It's kind of nice to have this button where you just press the button and it does it for you. In this case, since we don't have that, we just do it manually, and now it's going to turn back on. Now, assuming your grid has some sort of cockpit or control seat, we can also bind those two commands that are, in this case, our button was doing, to our hotbar for our cockpit. So here, we've got medical room toggle off and timer block reset start. So, in this case, I just press 1 and 2, and it does the same thing as pressing that button. So, that's another option. This is, like I say, this is the fancy version, where it does it all at once for you. This is the more old school version where you have to kind of do it yourself, not the end of the world. And then here's the final option. This one's got its upsides and its downsides. In this case, the timer block is in an infinite loop. Its actions are turn the medical room on, set it to on, and start itself. Start its countdown again. So since it's starting itself, it's always going to be counting down from 60. It's just in an infinite loop to turn this medical room back on. Now this is kind of handy because it's more of a foolproof system. In this case, when I turn this off, I mean, it will always turn back on, assuming, you know, the settings of the timer block haven't been messed with, and assuming you still have power. This will always just turn back on for you, and that's great. The only downside here is that this is kind of occurring on a random sequence. It might be at a random place when I walk up here and turn this thing off. It might only have 2 seconds left and then it turns right back on, and then we have to do it again. That's not the only downside. It has an issue when it comes to actually choosing grids to respawn at, and we're about to talk about that next. So this is a good foolproof method, and it might work for you in some cases. I tend to stick to this method with the button panel or with the cockpit activation, or even just doing it manually by going in the control panel and turning things off myself. Now, there is a pitfall there. If you turn this block off and you get shot suddenly and die, and you haven't turned this timer block on, then you're in a world of hurt because you can't respawn at your grid. So, that's the problem there. Now, let's take a look at how we use this in practice. And this is where the aperture comes into play. So, in this case, our aperture is 1 minute, right here, 1 minute. So that means every time I press this button, we have exactly 1 minute to respawn. Now, I've got this exact same station set up on Mars and on the alien world, or at least near those planets. So now that this one is turned off, when we respawn, Mars is closer to Earth than the alien world in Space Engineers. We'll be respawning at the Martian medical room. And here we are at the Martian medical room. Mars respawn. So, and this is where the aperture comes into play. The Earth medical room is still in cooldown. Probably got about 30 seconds left since I pressed that button. So, now this one's off for 60 seconds. The Earth one is off for, I don't know, 25 additional seconds. Now when we respawn, we will be respawning at the alien world medical room. And this is demonstration of what I mean by aperture. So let's say I've got 10 of these grids or 20 of these grids, and they're all spread out through space, way in deep space, you know, tens of thousands of kilometers from here. I'm going to need a larger aperture for the number of grids I have, because respawning, as we saw, takes about 5 seconds after you hit yes to respawn for the game to actually place your character back in. So it sometimes will take even a little bit longer than that because it will have to load in the grid that you're respawning at. And the end result is, you can say maybe about 10 seconds per grid is what you'll need to respawn. So if you have 20 grids out, and it takes 10 seconds to activate the respawn sequence for each one of them, you will be turning off respawn beds at each grid until you arrive at the grid you're looking for. And that's what I mean by aperture. So if you just have, in this case, 3 grids, 60 seconds is more than enough time to turn off the first 2 medical rooms to get to the third one you're looking for. Whereas if you have a whole fleet of ships, you're going to be needing to do this in succession pretty rapidly and turn blocks off and find the medical room block you're looking for. And all those blocks are going to need to remain off, in theory at least, so that you respawn at the closest one, which in this case would be the one that you're looking for, and the other ones stay off so you can respawn there. It's a little hard to describe, but it's really kind of simple once you get a feel for it. So, that is the primary method of respawn travel, turning off medical beds and having them turn back on via a timer block, and just rotating between grids, turning them off until you arrive at the one you're looking for. Now, there is another method of respawn travel that is equally as powerful, if not more so. And let's take a look at that. So again, if I respawn twice in a row, it will bring up the menu of spawn options. Now, in this case, Alien is the only one available, since that's the one where I was just at, and the other 2 are locked out, so we can't spawn here. Now, let's say I want to spawn at Earth. I know that the Earth medical room is at or near Earth. We can choose any one of these drop pods. These are disposable drop pods. They get deleted when you spawn a new one. You can delete them from your info screen at will. So, let's take a look at how this works. I don't want to have to go through the whole list of grids. I mean, it's only 3 in this case, but let's say it's 20 grids. I know there's one on Earth. So if I choose Earth-like drop pod, it will spawn me in a drop pod at Earth, right? Great. So, first of all, let's just delete this respawn lander. Now, when I respawn, where is the game going to send me? It's going to send me to my Earth medical room. It's going to pick the closest one, which is the Earth medical room. Here we are. Now, let's do this again. Let's say this time I'm trying to go to Mars. I know I've got a grid that is near Mars, so we can choose Mars or Europa in this case, because it doesn't really matter. If you get the point I'm trying to get at here, you can use these respawn landers to relocate your character near one of your respawn beds, respawn rooms, medical rooms, whatever the heck they're called. So here we are, we suicide. Now we will be respawning at the nearest one to here, which is the Martian one. Mars respawn. So this is another powerful tool for getting around the map. Now, if we take a look here, we've got also Triton and Pertam. I don't know how to pronounce these things anymore. And between that and the 3 planets, we've got a whole array of spawn options to relocate our characters so that we're near a grid, a particular grid of our choosing. So if I'm all the way out here, way past the Alien is 3,000 kilometers away, Earth is, looks like 9,000 kilometers away. If this is where my home base is, right here, right where my character is, then I can, if I'm stuck on Earth and I want to spawn back out here, I can just choose an Alien or Titan drop pod and then respawn from there, and it will send me to this medical room. Let's say it's right out here, because it's the closest one to where I was. And now it's gone. So, to recap, we've got 2 main options for respawning. We've got turning medical rooms off and cycling between grids, which is the tried and true method. Turn this off. Now it picks the next closest one, which I think is going to be, I think this was the Martian one here, and I think we're going to be at the, oh, yep, here we are back at Earth. That's one method, and the other method is use drop pods to relocate your character nearer to one of your medical rooms and respawn there. And it's also worth saying that this is pretty handy for when it comes to trading as well, because the moons are well known for being great trade hubs. There's pretty much always a trade zone within range of where your spawn pod drops, and there's usually about 4 trade zones per moon. Here I've already got 2 that are showing up on my heads up display. So I can go to these real quick. You know, I can. The other thing is you can take the hydrogen and oxygen bottles out of your oxygen generator from this respawn pod before you delete it. That's something I often do if I'm actually going to stay on the moon and travel to these various respawn locations. Is I'll just let's Control Z here and just take those out real quick. Boom. Now I've got some air and some hydrogen. Now I can fly across the planet's surface to these trade stations and do my, collect some contracts or whatever it is I gotta do. Obviously, I don't have my inventory with me and any of that, but it's very handy for collecting contracts or whatever else you need to do on these moons. So that's all for today. Those are the 2 primary methods used for getting around the map in Space Engineers, using respawn pods and turning off your medical room or multiple medical rooms in rapid succession. Like I say, it's not too easy to describe in words, but once you start playing around with these mechanics yourself using these methods, you'll see real quick it's not that complicated of a system, and it's a very powerful tool to relocate yourself at other grids without having to actually jump or fly through the game. I hope this helps. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.